going on? Greetings and welcome to Wachari Nation Building Monday Live.
We have the trees to fulfill the contracts that we already have.
Every time God show me a plant, I can see that plant everywhere.
We are descended from a people that have always been independent.
Basically, it's 34 plants that we want to return to be cultivated in the different communities.
Good night. Welcome to Wachari Nation Building Monday Live. I am Ifasina, Efunyemi. It is my pleasure as always to be with you and to be a part of this very rich discussion because we're going to be talking about one of our favorite plants. So I'm looking forward to it. Good night and welcome.
Good night. Going on. I'm Marley, Chatuye, and Nunez. And as per usual, we always prepare for a beautiful show, and I'm looking forward for tonight's show. But let's start off with our usual music video. And tonight we have Nabor, Naguya. So let's listen to this music and video, and the show continue right after.
Okay, gentlemen, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Well, that was so we were
Nabor.
It was a big deal in the background. Everybody, you just missed the big performance, but we were all enjoying that one.
I miss him a lot.
Yeah. May he rest in peace. Yeah. But that's a beautiful song from Nabor. I remember when that song came out, it was a hit. A lot of people really tuned into that song. Especially like in celebration when there are drums. That's one of the songs that people must sing.
It's about living with dignity, right, and being buried with pride.
Yes, and it is typical to our understanding of life and death being simply just another aspect of life. It's just another level of life. It's not like life completely ends because there is life after this one that we are living the way we're living it on this earth. And so the song really captures that because it's talking about our music and our celebration of life. And people might be concerned about that. Like, why are we celebrating something that can be so morbid and sad? But for us, it is a celebration of that transition. It's celebrating that person's life, how they lived their life, it celebrates that, and celebrating the afterlife. They're going to just another stage of life. They transition to another stage of life, and we continue to celebrate them in that other realm, that other stage of life. They continue to influence our lives. So the song really speaks to Garifuna tradition, Garifuna Duo, and I really appreciate. And if any of you had the privilege of interacting with Paul Nabor, that man
Oh,
was such a
I
light
danced. I
spirit. He
danced with
was.
him all night for his 84th birthday. All night. Des was there. Oh man, we danced until everything hurt.
He was that
Yes,
kind of guy. He
he
was.
was
Oh
that
my.
kind of guy. But you know, Narbi at the end, right? He didn't really move his body around. He sang. The voice just exploded out of him like a ray of light, and then his body would just bob up and down. But in that bob, he was dancing. He was dancing the whole room. You know, he could
It
carry a
was
beat.
great. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I got the opportunity to meet such a legend and interact with him. And for those who get to enjoy his music, then you get a glimpse too of just the richness of who he was and his personality. So tonight we're going to be talking like promised. Remember last week we got all excited about Ruda,
Yeah,
and
just a little
so
bit.
we're going to be talking about that. And it wasn't just us, and it wasn't just a little bit. People were commenting and interested in hearing more about Ruda. So that's why we were so excited to ask you, Doc, to talk about it, to tell us a little bit more about it. Just
Oh,
few things
it's
had
a
come up,
pleasure.
but this
Yeah.
is an important plant. We're all familiar with it. Like all the plants you've been talking about, they are Garifuna. You know, I met a young
Yes.
man this weekend who is non-Garifuna, but grew up in a Garifuna household, like spent like 7 years of his youth in a Garifuna household. And so the lemuru, he has that in his yard right now. And he said, you know what? When I die 50 or so years from now, this is what this young man tells me, you know. When I die 50 or so years from now, people will say, "Oh, a Garifuna person lived here because lemuru is in the yard."
That's right.
But you know, he's clearly not Garifuna, but they will think that about him because he recognizes our traditions. He recognizes the kind of vegetation, the plants that we would have around us. And he made a very valid, interesting piece of information he shared. He said you could know how far Garifuna communities extend because of the presence of those same plants
Absolutely. That's
in the
absolutely. Yeah.
surrounding of the community. And he said that lemuru could be found in the south. He was talking about Barranco specifically, all the way to Moho River.
Yeah. That's a study that I did across the entire Garifuna territory. Not just Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, even in the United States, visiting the homes of Ingarinagu communities, especially like in New Orleans and Florida where they could plant. Same thing. Same plants. We are that
Powerful,
stuck with them. Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us about Ruda. We
Yes.
heard about
Ruda is
Ruda
actually
is like
the
a precious, precious
yes.
one.
Ruda time.
It's
Ruda
the
time.
number one favorite because all the climates that we Garinagu have ended up in, the Ruda has adapted. It grows in all of them. And it's really the only one of all of our sacred plants that grows everywhere where we have been dispersed. It grows in cool weather, it grows in hot weather, but it has its adaptations, right? We discussed at the last show how the Ruda survives more when it's in the back of the house. It turns out two things. The Ruda likes poor soil. It wants to take your trouble away. This is a plant that comes to alleviate your suffering. So it wants you. It wants to be where the soil is least uh, touched, where it's least productive, where it gets less sun, maybe too much water. That imbalanced place on your land. That's where you will plant Ruta, and it actually heals the land by just being there. The other thing is people touching it. Um, there's a myth that you have to steal Ruta in order for it to grow, and that's not necessarily true. It's not 100. It's true, but not true. Yes, in order for the Ruta to grow for you, someone has to give it to you. So it
Ah,
has some kind of there's some kind of taboo against buying Ruta. In fact, you'll notice the people who sell Ruda sell it really, really, really cheap, because all they can do is maybe charge you for the transportation or for the paper that they wrapped it in or the pot that they put it in. But they can't. It's bad luck to charge for the plant, the actual Ruda plant. So it's supposed to be. It's a plant that wants to be given life to life.
Mm-hmm.
So my plant. This is why the guest tonight, and I told you this is divine. The guest tonight. You have Baba Roy tonight. He is the one who gave me my Ruda plant. And
Interesting.
hundreds, I have put out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of plants from that little stick. You just cut a piece and give it away, cut a piece and give it away, give it away. What happens is when people see the Ruda in front of your house, they help themselves to a piece because they really, really want it, but they also know that they can't really go buy it, that it's better to get it from someone where the Ruda is already alive and working. So that's one of the things that I learned. But I want to share a couple of more things with you. We're going to be very, very quick. I'm going to switch over to share, and you're going to love this.
And that is the plant behind you, right?
Yes, that's the one behind me.
Uh-huh. Yes, I
Um,
was wondering because it
Hey,
looks
hey,
like Ruda.
Marley, I'm looking at the image and I'm smelling the plant.
right, it programs you, right? So here is the beautiful Ruda. Take a good look at the leaves. Now, what's interesting is that it is green, right? When you look at it, it's green. But when you look at Ruda against other plants, you're going to see how it changes as we go on with the slides. Ruda is a rare aromatic plant with a history of medicinal and magical uses. I use the word magic. It's really spiritual, but magical is more fun because the plant is really kind of fun. It is a male plant. It's a man plant. It likes male things. It has that little musky male smell, and the aroma of the plant is actually a remedy for men who are angry with women. So another reason why the Ruda is good to have in the back of the house when the spouse is upset or angry, he can just go out there, cool off by smelling the essence, the aroma of the Ruda plant. So it does calm the man down. It's used in baths, in candles, or even carried in pouches. It's used to protect and strengthen your auric field and also to promote health. It has a lot of medicinal qualities. We're not going to go into it now. In fact, I'm going to make a longer video that I'll be posting on the new channel, the Wachari Nation Builders YouTube channel. So you'll be able to go deeper with the Ruda. But for tonight, I just wanted to share this part with you so that we have time for all the other good stuff. The Ruda is native to the Mediterranean area, and that covers everything where Black people came from. It's used in sacred rituals and in ceremonies since ancient times. Ever since we can remember, we can't remember. We don't have a memory of sacred rituals that do not include Ruda. It's used for protection against hexes, curses, and evil eye. That's to put it simply. But the plant itself, because of its medicinal and scientific properties of lightening the air, of disinfecting the air, and lightening the vibe, it actually cleans the air of like heavy emotional feelings. It is a natural insect repellent, and it protects plants that are nearby from harmful pests. It allows friendly pests to continue to exist. But another reason why we plant the Ruda in the back is because in the front, we have always, in Garifuna homes, planted basil in the front. We would always have the mints in the front. And Ruda and basil don't get along. Like, for example, Ruda, Wali Lama, which is, a mint, the sage, and the basil. We really grow those plants a lot. So they don't get along. Well, it's not that they don't get along, it's that the protective energies of the Ruda actually hinder the growth of the basil, the sage, and the mint, and plants like them.
Mm.
So we don't baby the plant too much. The plant does thrive in poor soil. So put it in the soil that needs the most healing. It's a good plant to grow in the most troubled areas of your farm or in your garden. We use it for healing the land. Now, the flowers are edible and they are used in cooking as a culinary flavor. I know a lot of people think Ruda is poisonous, don't use it.
Uh,
Um, the flowers are edible. And it's best to trim the flowering buds from the plant before it goes to seed, right? So the Ruda flower buds are a delicacy and the best part of the plant to eat. So I bet you didn't know that the Ruda was edible. So it's better
No,
to harvest. What did you say something, Marley?
I said no. I thought the ruda was only used for medicinal purposes and
Exactly.
spiritual bath.
That's why I didn't
That's
want to harp
amazing.
over the medicinal stuff. We can do that another time, but a lot of people don't know that it's edible. So, but once the Ruda goes to seed, however, it becomes a little bit more toxic. The plant gets more bitter. It's not to the point where it's poisonous, but it becomes unpleasant to eat. So the type of flower or leaf that you would consume would be from a plant that has yet to go to seed. Um, and that's it. That's all
That's
I
the
wanted
flowers.
to share.
I saw I'm sharing what you sent, Doc,
Uh huh.
and
Okay.
I
Good.
see in the first slide you have it with yellow flowers.
Yes.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that it was a flowering plant.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It flowers a lot, and it's the flowers that you eat. You use them for seasonings. They are really awesome.
Okay,
And
so
the
just to
leaves
give
And
now,
and
everybody
and,
the
you can
and
opportunity
take.
to
that can
see
eat
what
the
you were
flower.
talking about.
Do you need to like the cook the flowers or steam it, or you can eat it raw
Oh
right off
man,
the
I
plant?
eat them right off the plant. I eat them right
Wow,
off the plant. But let me
wow.
mention this: you can take when we consecrate a room, like a sacred space, before a ceremony. It's you see the sprig of the ruta. You take that top sprig that has three little branches, and that's what you use to dip in the water and bless and bless and bless the
Mhm.
grounds. Now the way we did it was with seawater, with this fresh seawater. I don't know, it's a particular moon, a particular time of day. I'm sure that there is a ritual that goes along with it. But I remember seeing is the bowl of seawater that they would bring into either the house or around the house and use the ruta sprig to do the blessing. This is before we had any of the other introductions. This is what we did. We
I see
blessed
that
things.
you talked about it being with other or aromatic plants, and so
Yes.
I see the oregano next to this. What are the other plants around it in this
Oh,
slide?
that's lamb's wool. Yeah, it's he's okay with other plants other than basil, mint, and sage.
Ah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
That one, there's a plant there that looks like sage, but it's not. That's a lamb's ear. It looks like sage, but it's not.
Ah, okay, okay.
Otherwise, it'd be dead. But you notice the gray, now the ruta that's really green looks gray when it's
Yes,
next to other
yes,
plants. Yes.
Yes.
yes,
That's that
yes.
silvery, yeah, hue that
Yeah.
it gives.
Yeah. I've seen ruda like it look a little bluish, like a dark bluish,
It's blue energy, yeah.
bluish. Yeah.
It's a blue green
Yeah.
energy. But you see
Hmm.
more the color differentiation when it's around other plants.
Okay.
And when would you see these when it's getting ready to put out
The,
the flowers? I don't think
interestingly,
I've ever noticed these, that the
oh
buds
man,
that you have here.
let me tell you, I my ruta flowered all the time, all the time, all the time. I it just didn't stop. It was like a perpetual, constant flowering.
Uh,
And the lady I know where I got advice because she didn't. She just used the ruta and it just grew around her. Like wherever she lived, wherever she moved, it just grew around her. But I found out her secret. Everyone who comes into her house, she gives them a piece of ruta. She gives to take with them to plant, but she'll tell you go ahead and plant. And I remember Baba Roy also, he does the same thing. I don't know how much seed and how much stick that man has given away. When you leave his house, he says, "Oh, plant this. Take, if you like something, he gives it to you to plant." So the ruta grows best for people like that. So
Excellent.
if you do come across a ruta, the best way to ensure the health and the longevity of your ruta is to continually share it with other people.
Okay,
uh-huh.
It's
great.
an Albu Bruno plant. It's a typical Garifuna plant.
Oh, and look at the flowers up
Yeah.
close.
We do use
These are
the flower
interesting.
petals for for some of the smokes that we use in our ceremonies.
Mm. I will
Wow.
need to pay attention to see. I have not seen Ruda flowering, and these look quite interesting.
Yeah, we don't let it flower. So the good thing to do is that if you can get a bunch of ruda, I mean, even
That's
if
right.
you buy it, the best thing to do is to cut that up and give as many sprigs to as many people as possible. You plant yours, you plant your sprig. That'll grow into a nice big bush. But the way we know to ensure the fruiting of a ruta plant is to just give, give. It's, it wants you to give. That's what makes it strong. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I didn't think you'd be so interested in this plant.
Okay, and so I see you also have the seeds, the images of the seeds we're
Yes.
talking
Show us.
about.
Yeah. Aren't they teeny tiny?
Mhm.
Do you know that I was at the Botanical Garden in Staten Island, New York, and I was walking home. My son and daughter-in-law lived there. I'm walking home, and I see a ruta plant. I couldn't believe it, and it was seeding. So I got all these seeds, and some of them got stuck at the bottom of my suitcase. So when I got to Belize, I cleaned out my suitcase, and I got ruta plants from there. They were a little weaker because they're not used to the heat, but
Mhm.
they grew. So they're that tiny and that strong.
Okay.
And yes, you can produce oil from ruta. Yeah, you can make
All
essential
right.
oil from the
From the
plant,
seed, from the
oil
seed.
from the seeds. Yeah, both
So,
essential oil from the leaf because it remember the ruta is an oil plant. When you squeeze
all
it right,
right.
it's thick, it's sticky, it's got resin in there.
Well, thanks so much, Doc. That was excellent. And
So
let me add Baba Roy to the stream because he's been mentioned
bring him
already.
on.
Because he was the one that gifted you the
Mhm.
Ruda, and that's that you made the point that we it doesn't grow unless it's given.
Yeah.
It
Uh-huh.
has to be, a gift to you, and you get the opportunity. It flourishes for you. So good night, Baba Roy. Welcome
Good
to
night,
Wachari
Baba.
Ah,
Nation Building Monday
Welcome.
Yeah.
Live.
mabuiga, gona
Mabwi.
sana hlaya huma.
Oh,
Doc,
Unatua
lo
again.
mahinani bo.
I know, Baba, and you live right there.
Ariyo biasa?
Oh, my God, did na.
Okay.
And
She's still.
she was talking about you, Baba.
Oh, I'm
Because
not guilty.
This time you are, Baba, in a very
yes,
loving way.
yes, she was talking. We were talking about the Ruda, and she said she got her Ruda from you.
Yeah, and I recall we were traveling in San Pedro, no, not San Pedro Sula,
Oh,
Puerto Cortes, remember?
that's right.
Yeah, and we found some in the market, and you taught me how to prepare it for planting, and we planted a number of them. Brought it
Yes.
home to plant, smuggled it
Yes.
home to plant.
Well, you got them to grow, and because
Yeah,
I mean I didn't know. Yeah, there is a trick to rooting them. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we
Baba,
have a
yes, I
question
did
in the
see
comments
a
about.
lot of ruda. I did see a lot of ruda in your yard, Mr. Kai. I was so
Yeah.
impressed that it just grows for you. Like you have that magic touch because
Yeah, we have
it's there.
we are blessed, bro. We have all kind of things. We can hardly keep track.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
We just have to keep keeping on, keep at it, keep at it. Yeah.
Before we before getting to the discussion on our attitude toward work, which of course the planting of herbs and food is definitely a part of Garifuna traditional work. There is a question in the comments, Doc, about if the seeds can be planted, and I think you had touched on it briefly. So someone was asking about the seeds, planting the seeds of the Ruda.
definitely. Yeah, you can definitely plant them. It takes a little bit longer, and the amount of seeds that I found that germinate is very small. Like if you plant 100 seeds, maybe you'll get five that'll take, and then you get the birds will come, and for some reason they like them. So planting from stick seems to
Much
be,
better.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe Baba has had a different experience with seeds.
No, I've never tried growing from seeds. Why bother when it's easy to grow them from sticks?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Unless it's an experiment.
You know, Baba, I
Yeah.
had forgotten we smuggled that Ruda. I thought it was a clean thing.
No, the secret is out.
That was so
Yeah,
long ago.
it's okay. They can come out. They can come after us. Where we are concerned, we are a nation across borders, and
Right.
they
Right.
shouldn't be
Yes.
putting
Right.
obstacles in our way.
Correct.
Yeah, that's true. Those are our
So,
plans.
so
We did bring
instead
them
of
from.
saying you smuggle it, you brought it home along with you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, Baba, we invited you again this year, and just like that, Suhale Abai room. Since you
Ah,
came on and you were talking, you shared so much rich history, and here we are in a whole new year already. Um, and it's the Labor Day weekend. We are celebrating labor, and I thought it quite appropriate for us to talk about Garifuna labor. On Wachari, we've been talking so much about our plants. Garifuna Dwell, how important farming is and
Mm.
gardening to our tradition as a people. And so I just wanted to have you share your really valuable insight on that. How we have been as workers for ourselves primarily, and workers for others. What has been generally and traditionally our work ethic as a people, as workers? We've always worked for ourselves. I think that was the first thing that stood out to me, that we work for ourselves, and we see work as something important. So I want to welcome you again. Thanks for accepting our invitation to be here again and to share your very valuable insight with us, Baba Roy. So, yes,
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. I'm not in the best of shape. My allergies are acting up, so I guess I have to lean on the doctor for some advice. But in the meantime, I'm drinking a lot of liquids. Fortunately, my mind, I believe, is clear, and my voice as well. So I think you'll have to bear with me stopping the flow from my nose. Constantly using my handkerchief to do that. I'm sure my voice is clear enough so you'll know what I'm saying.
yes,
Um, yes, as you and I discussed yesterday, or maybe day before yesterday, about the misinformation that has been spread about us, or that is taught to us about ourselves, and we buy into the narrative. Um, they say that Garifuna people are in school. You learn that the Garifuna people make a living from subsistence fishing and farming. Full stop. End of story. That is a summary of it. But that is not all there is to it. Um, and I believe that it is important to elaborate on how we made our living and what our traditional way is. Um, the I cannot tire of saying that in our culture, it is essentially the woman who produces the food from the land to feed the family, the entire family, husband, children, everybody, extended family even. The woman needed a man to clear the land because that is man's work. And once the land has been cleared, she and the children complete the land preparation, that is, picking up the excess sticks that need to be moved and burning them and stuff like that, and planting. I will remind you that we are a cassava people. And everybody knows that the Garifuna man, does not work cassava. The task of planting, planting cassava, caring for the garden, harvesting and processing rests with the woman. I don't think there's any question about that. The only place where I have seen men involved in the Ereba, or in this case, the Bami making process, is in Nicaragua, and there's a reason for that. They no longer have the ruguma. They no longer had the ruguma. It has been reintroduced. They knew of it, but they didn't have it anymore. And so they have to use cloth to squeeze out the juice from the cassava. And because we all know that man is supposed to have a little more strength in his muscles than women, that they are built that way, that task fell upon the man. So there was a time when Canon Valentine, Baba John Mariano, and myself went to Orinoco, and we having seen how they operated, and we took along a ruguma. It was interesting to see that it was the men who were interested in this ruguma, and the reason is obvious, because it is their time. Their time spent squeezing cassava, since they were now the ones doing the iburahani with the cloth. It is their time that was going to be reduced. The process was going to be made more efficient, and so it was going to save them time. The women couldn't care less, because it had become a man's job. But generally, in our other communities, there's a clear division of labor. Now, the task now since the woman was growing cassava, then she may as well grow other foods as well, plantains, yams, cocoa, and so on. So I remember from my childhood in Barranco that is how we lived. It was the women who tended the farm plots to produce food for the home. Now, something happened that messed that up, and that was the change in the school holidays from May and June to July and August. It seems simple, huh? But it had a devastating effect on us. And so when we talk about our relationship with the land and how we seem to have become a little distant from the land, so that it becomes necessary for programs like this, for movements like Wachari, to lure us back, it is because of that one decision that we had no control over. It was something imposed on us, and it messed us up. Because what happened was that, remember what I said, that it was the woman who produced food for the home?
Yes.
The children are also involved in that, because in the old days, like when I was a child, school would have closed at the end of April last week. Last Friday would have been the end of the school year. And so that the next couple of months could be spent, the woman would be freed from her responsibility to the children as it relates to their preparing them to go to school. And so now she was free to go to the farm, the land having been cleared, prepared by the man. So she and the children would take it from there. And so the children are socialized into that kind of work, and socialized by the mother, by the grandmother, whose job it was to produce food. When the school holidays were changed from May and June to July and August, because school is not going to close for another 2 months. And you notice that we already have some drizzles. Imagine how it is going to be in July,
Yes.
when school finally closes at the end of June. that is no time to be to be planting. The time for planting, preparing the land and planting would have already passed. And so at first, when the change happened, the woman tried to hold on, but it became increasingly difficult. And so in the end, a lot of them just gave up. So a lot of our women now are not doing that kind of farming. And we can't blame them. We have to blame the system and policy decisions that were made that negatively impacted our way of life, our livelihood. And so, so that is one part of the equation. So men grew rice, and it was a very important source of income. Men also fished and farmed. They farmed. They also fished and hunted, so that their job was to provide protein for the house. So the women provided the bread kind, so to speak, through their labor, and the men provided the protein from fishing and hunting. And then the man would also sell the surplus, distribute send some to relatives and friends, and sell some, and as a source of income. The man would also do jobs. Well, it was also the man's job to build the house and to do repairs on the house, and also to sell his labor in the community as well as outside of the community to supplement the family income. That is how we lived. That is how we operated. Then government policy intruded. So I pointed out that in Barranco and in Punta Gorda, the men grew a lot of rice for sale as a source of income. Then something happened. The government decided that it was no longer going to accept BG79, the name of the variety of rice that people knew about and had been producing for a long, long time. So they knew all about BG79. When government made that decision, again, it had a devastating impact on our people. That is when rice production stopped in Punta Gorda and Barranco. It trickled out. Why? Because the support that had been there previously, when you were allowed to grow BG79 for sale, was removed. The thresher was removed. The boats no longer came to collect rice, because in the old days, when there was enough rice in the rice mill, government would send boats to transport the rice to Punta Gorda. That stopped happening. Government stopped buying the rice because their production had dwindled or disappeared. The farm demonstrator was moved, the thresher was moved, so the support system that was there to facilitate that production was removed. And so how was the man going to satisfy, how was the man going to play his role as an income earner to fulfill the needs of the family? So the man, just like the woman, after the change in the school holidays, had to look elsewhere. And that is when we became more reliant on wage labor, selling our labor and relying on money to make a living. And if you look at it, if you look at the history, if you talk to the people who will remember, like I did, that was when people started moving out of the Toledo district, the Garifuna people especially, from Barranco, from Punta Gorda, to go to the north to look for work. That is when they went to Pembroke Hall. Some of you might never have heard of Pembroke Hall. The name was later changed to Libertad. I'm sure you all know what where Libertad is.
Yes,
and
yes.
what was going on in Libertad. At that time, there was only one sugar factory, and that sugar factory was in Pembroke Hall, which was renamed Pembroke Hall. And that is why today there is the remnants of a Garifuna community and a branch of the National Garifuna Council in Pembroke Hall. It all started at that time, and that is the reason why it happened. People also moved from Dangriga. So that explains what we see there today. Um, so both of those actions, those policy decisions, I should add that in the case of the rice, there was no assistance at all. When the decision was made, there was no support to assist to facilitate the transition from BG79 to the other varieties of rice like the Seekers and the Patnas and the Blue Bonnets and those other variety of rice that government was still accepting. There was no support. Now, where were the people going to get their seeds? How were they going to know how to produce this other variety of rice, seeing that it was different from BG79, which they knew all about? So they knew everything about growing BG79. They knew how to keep the seeds. They knew how to culture it. They knew everything about BG79. But the other varieties required a different culture, and they did not have that. The help was not there. And so instead, it was decided that we were not farmers anymore. I recall when an anthropologist came to do work, to lay the groundwork, to do the baseline study for what became the Toledo Rural Agricultural Project, Rural Development Project, TRDP, which was based in Blue Creek. She did her study, and she concluded that the Mayas were the only farmers in the Toledo district. That was her conclusion. She did a synchronic study. She looked at what she saw on the ground, but she did not bother to look at the root cause of what created the situation that she found on the ground. This was in the early 1980s, around 1982, 83, thereabouts. Now, I, having lived it, knew better. I knew that this was the result of actions taken by the powers that be, with no consultation with us, and we were feeling the pinch. Now, I think that if they had consulted with us about this change in the school holidays, it would have been difficult for us to foresee the impact that it was going to have on us. That is a job for scholars, for social scientists. There should have been some kind of a study to forecast the impact that the change would have had on the society, but that did not happen. A decision was made, and based on what? Based on the need, according to the powers that be, to synchronize our school year with the United States and the United Kingdom, because when some people left, finished school year to go to university, they should be able to transition seamlessly. To that I was going to say bullshit, but I'll say foolishness. Because how many people were going to go to university? And so I don't think that livelihood should have been sacrificed for that. Because we had people going to university and doing well in spite of the fact that our school year is different. If you look at the neighboring countries, at Guatemala, Honduras, and so on, the school year ends in December, for God's sake. I think it's in December. And several, while they have their own universities and so on, there are also people from there who go to university in the States and Europe, and it doesn't have a negative impact on them. So, so to summarize, when it comes to our work ethic, we had it. It was tied to the land, and both women and men could do physical work. They they had their roles as Garifuna women and Garifuna men. The children were socialized into a relationship with the land, so they grew up having that relationship. But all of that was disrupted, and but which it is not surprising because when you study Belizean history, and not only Belizean history, the history of colonization, there is always a demand for labor, cheap labor, labor on the terms of the employers, who are the oligarchs, the wealthy people, the business owners. And the government is always in collusion with them because the government always wants the government. They have their control over the government. It's inordinate. It has always been. They're the people who get into government, into the National Assembly, or they're the ones who finance it to begin with, so that even when a grassroots person becomes elected, he's still beholden to that class of people. And so our education system, the control of our minds, our socialization at the national level, all militate towards bringing about these changes. And in our case, as Garifuna people, our de-indigenization, which is very important. So sometimes we look at ourselves and what we do, and we are hard on ourselves. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? The Garifuna people lazy. They turn away from the land. But if you look closely enough and if you dig beneath the surface, as I am attempting to do in what I'm saying to you, then you'll find that it goes deeper than that. And that people have to live, they have to respond. You can't blame people for leaving their homes to go look for jobs when their lives have been disrupted and the opportunities that they expect or the access to resources that they need has been removed because of decisions that are outside of their control. And that is what has happened here. Now, people say there is a myth. As a part of that social control, there is a myth about the lazy cherub, just like there are myths about the lazy nigger in other countries, the lazy native. And here in the Sand Creek district, you hear stories about made-up story, a myth about the cane farmer needing people to go harvest to harvest citrus, finds a group of men hanging out in broad daylight, midday, mid-morning or mid-afternoon, on a shed playing domino. And he tells them, I need some people to go harvest rice. I'm going to pay you so much. And as the myth goes, the people reply, well, bring the tree to town and we will see about it. We'll think about it. Now, the sad thing is that some of our own people repeat that story and they perpetuate that myth. How can you accuse our people of being lazy when the citrus industry in the Sand Creek district was built on the backs of Garifuna people? If you do a little bit of research, you'll find that man, woman, and youth were employed in the citrus industry, in every aspect of the citrus industry, from nursery work through to processing. There are stories of women, like my mother-in-law, for instance, working in the processing plant, in the packing shed, because they used to do canning and that kind of thing. So there were people working the farms, picking citrus. There were people doing nursery work. There were people, and it had an impact on Dangriga. Like every Friday, payday was Suba's night, they call it. Yes, because there was money. The money was circulating. By the time I came to live in Dangriga in 1971, there was hardly that impact anymore. Instead of multiple trucks coming to pick up workers, there was only one. I remember when the banana industry started, they needed workers. People looked forward to the trucks coming to Dangriga and Hopkins, and St. Bite, Georgetown to get workers for the packing shed. People looked forward to that because it could help to supplement their income. But that was not enough. They wanted cheap labor and they wanted docile labor. And our people were involved in the nationalist movement through the labor movement. You know about that, Ifa.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So they were considered angry, and you can't chance it. And this applied not only to Garifuna workers, but also Creole workers and others. So the business owners, always want cheap labor, docile labor. They discourage unionization. And so when they had the turmoil in Central America in the 80s, there was an influx of of refugees to Belize. They welcomed that. And because it was a chance to break the backs of the union and to get cheap labor, docile labor that was not unionized, because these people felt that their existence here was precarious, and so they would not want to risk being deported. So they preferred to live under the hammer, under the axe, rather than assert themselves. And so they would accept whatever conditions were doled out to them, whereas our people were accustomed to standing up because they knew what their rights were. And so those things have affected us. People, now the sad thing, because it also relates to our spirituality. It is now common knowledge that the essence of Garifuna Duo is I for you and you for me. Aubu Amurinu. Now, the relationship among our people was such, and not just limited to our people, but our social relationships involved accommodating our friends, our relatives, our social network. So that if a family went to visit another family, they didn't go to a hotel. They sought out their relatives, they sought out their friends. And they didn't pay for lodging. This was our way. So that when you sat down when it was time to sleep, even if we didn't have beds to offer, Abawabudu Wabarari, we spread a sheet on the floor. You get maybe a nad, and there is at least you have shelter. You can sleep. And in the morning, at noon, and at night, when it was time for breakfast or time for lunch, time for supper, the food was served to everybody, and no payment was required. That is inconsistent with our principle, our value of Aubu Amurinu. Because you accommodate your people, but when the time comes for you to go and visit them, they also accommodate you. Now, when you have your garden produce, your farm produce, when you have your fish, when you have your meat, you afford to feed people not just for one meal, not just for one day, not just for 1 week, but even for an extended period of time, because it doesn't cost you anything. You have it. And so my point is that it is easier to live according to Aubu Amurinu when we are productive, when we produce our own food. So now, when you have to rely on wages, You might think it hard to invite somebody to share a plate of hudut at your table because everything in that plate represents money, represents labor that you have sold somehow. And so you don't afford to feed anybody for, you may not even afford to feed somebody for one meal, let alone a day, a month, a week, a month, you know. So it has an impact again on the way we live, on our cosmology, our spirituality, the essence of our being, our Bomorinu.
Baba Roy.
I leave it there.
Yes.
Give an
Yes.
Ernumanaribu.
and
So you
and
can
everybody is just consuming this like, oh my god, all this information, but it's so insightful and so powerful and so meaningful as always. um our hour has just like gone,
oh
expired, like
Gumosa.
just like that. So we want to ask if you could please come back next week. We have so many comments. People are like, this is such rich information, as we always appreciate this, and our attitude toward work. This is how our nation has been built. It's based on this value of everybody. You talked about women, men, children, everybody being actively involved. So if you would be so kind as to indulge us, could you join us again next week to continue this discussion?
Yes, I can come back for a question and answer session. I monopolized the talking this time around, so next time the viewers can do the monopolizing. But
Yes.
the reason I agreed to appear on the show tonight, or any other night really, is because I feel that it is important to share information. There's some of us who have, maybe because we're idle, we have time to reflect. But seriously, I pointed out that our people might not have been able, that even if our people have been consulted in the change of the school holidays, if there wasn't academic input from specialists, people who are prepared, educated, and prepared to lead this kind of discussion, to explore and anticipate the impact, we might not have seen a problem with it. And so we might have even ended up agreeing. So what I'm saying is what we have observed in hindsight. But even in hindsight, a lot of people still don't see it. So we beat up on ourselves instead of asking ourselves, well, why did this happen? Why did this shift happen? When did it happen? How did it happen? Why did it happen? Because I will not blame our people. We have to live. And if one door is closed, we have to look somewhere else for another door, another way, even though that way might not be consistent with our worldview and the way we live. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to discuss. I don't mind
Yes.
coming back, so
Yes.
we can clarify whatever doubts or questions the viewers might have.
Yes, I'm sure the comments can be transferred to the next segment also, because there'll be questions and that can come up, be answered in the next segment. That would be good.
Oh, but Sir Baba
I
Roy,
think
that
time is up.
was yes.
Thank you, Baba.
Sir Doc, Sir
Magadi.
Baba Roy,
This was
Marley,
very
All right.
all
All
our
right.
comments, all our viewers, thank you so much. See you
Lirada.
all next week.
Bungi huma.
Ayo.
Good boom again.
Ayo.
hugs, Baba.
Yes, so as per usual, we close off with a song. And tonight we have Super G with Hero. Ayo.
Ayo.